Hey everybody, Dr. Megan Monday here. I wanted to talk to you about two of my favorite things. The first one is therapeutic crying. As a therapist, every time I get someone to cry in my office, there is a little part of me that goes, yes. I feel like crying is a really important release, and we oftentimes are so busy with our lives we don't get a chance to do it enough. Sometimes it's easier to cry over a really touching movie, and so that movie that I just recently cried over was A Star is Born. I know it's getting a lot of attention because Lady Gaga just won the Oscar, so deserved. She was amazing. The movie was amazing. Such a powerful message, and so I wanted to kind of talk about that from kind of a mental health perspective. First is just her story of survivorship. There's been a meme on the internet saying that her boyfriend told her that she would not amount to anything, and she said that one day you're not going to be able to go into a coffee shop without hearing my name. And I just love that belief in herself, and I think part of why Lady Gaga has made it has not been because of her extreme stunts, but because she has really created a brand around authenticity and being yourself. And I think that was a really powerful message in the movie that conveyed, and I think that's what made it so emotionally touching and relatable. So the movie, total spoiler trigger warning here. So if you've not seen the movie, turn this video off and go see the movie. If you have seen it, you know that it does a lot of, covers some definitely mental health issues and has a pretty sad ending. So what I love about the movie is, one, it is a pretty feminist retelling of what it's like to be in show business. So I think that's a really important topic because, one, going back to her own personal experience with what I would call an emotionally abusive ex, I work a lot with women where they've been told those things by their boyfriend. And if you believe that, that's going to limit your ability to be great. And by being great, it's not necessarily about achieving things. It's more about like being who you are. And so I love, there's this one part in the beginning of the movie where Bradley Cooper says, you've got something great to say and you've got the power to make people listen. And that just really touched me because when you're innovative, when you're authentic, it is groundbreaking, even if it's a story that's been told 1,000 times. I mean, this story is essentially kind of a riff on, damsel in distress, the prince comes and saves her, except I really feel like it's a feminist retelling because she really ultimately tries to save him. So I think they do a really great job looking at, how body image triggers and the culture of perfectionism along looks can be very destructive and can really hold you back from being who you are. I think most women struggle with that in some way, and one of the things that I think frees you from struggling with those things is realizing like it's calculated. The more women have gotten power in this world, the more we focused on a very sort of hostile, limiting view of what beauty is. And so I think it's really important to just be who you are and rejoice and celebrate that, because for women, if you micromanage your appearance and spend all your energy on hating yourself, like that's a huge distraction from the great things you can be doing in the world. So I loved at one point they really talked about her nose and kind of used this as a gesture that became like very endearing and a loving kind of moment between them. And so kind of like embracing your imperfections as something that can be perfectly imperfect. So I just love that message all across the board. I love that it was LGBT friendly. Part of it was taking place in a drag club. That's also part of Lady Gaga's MO. I love just the inclusiveness. I think that's a value that particularly in this time we need a lot of right now. I also thought it was a great look at addiction. And some of the things that stood out to me there were he was really in pain. And I think in certain industries like Hollywood or the restaurant industry, certain industries go hand in hand with addiction. And so it's kind of a casualty in some realms. So I think it was powerful the way they depicted that. I heard someone say that your light has to be your inner light has to shine greater than the spotlight that's on you. And that's where you can see a lot of celebrities deal with mental health issues, with addiction, because the attention is toxic. And so I love that they kind of dealt with that, where everybody was trying to take his picture and didn't want to see him as a real person. I thought that was really beautifully done. And then, God, it's just like an old-fashioned love story. And it was sort of a Romeo and Juliet, and you could just tell that felt sense of deep love. And I just found that to be, extremely well done and incredibly romantic. And I definitely want to see them get together in real life. The last thing I want to talk about mental health wise is suicide. And that really hit kind of a personal chord with me. A lot of my work, particularly when I was doing IOP, involved helping people who were chronically suicidal. And that is a really difficult issue because literally people are fighting for their lives, and that's no easy task to, when you feel like suicide's an option, that speaks to the level of pain. And a lot of people don't know that suicidal thoughts is a symptom of depression. And so it really can happen to anyone at any time who's depressed. And some people, due to trauma and different things, really experience that chronically. And I think a lot of times people who struggle with addiction also are suicidal, and that may be the manifestation of it. So just the heartbreak that goes along with losing someone like that was very powerful for me, and I definitely related to just the kind of exquisite pain to think about losing someone you care about. And I think as a therapist, sometimes we have to endure that as part of the job, and I luckily have never experienced that. And yet sometimes it's inevitable part of being in the helping profession. And so I thought that they dealt with that. And at one point, she's kind of going through, line by line, what she could have done differently to save him. And Sam Elliott says to her, "It's not your fault. It's just not your fault." And I think that that's just a really powerful line. Going back to another movie that I love about therapy, Good Will Hunting, that very scene where he breaks him down saying, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And I think a lot of times when I'm working with people in therapy, the biggest thing I'm working on is it's not your fault. Like, it's not what's wrong with you. It's what happened to you. And so the cycle of self-hate oftentimes comes out of abusive relationships, and it sort of takes root in the person's head, and it's kind of like a laugh track, something that goes on and on and on, that it's difficult for people to control. So I just thought that movie was super powerful, super well done. If you need a good cry, I would highly recommend it. If you know someone who's struggling with suicide or addiction, it may be a trigger, but I think it is a good look at what that life is like, and I think they do it in a realistic way. So that could be a good support for someone who maybe knows someone who's going through that. There are lots of resources out there. If you're someone struggling with suicide, there is the text line 741-741. There's 1-800-SUICIDE and other resources. So you don't have to struggle, and therapy can do a lot to help people find the will to live and create a life worth living. So I do think media is something that really shapes our world, and so it's important to consume responsibly and, also to pay attention to media that's done really well. So thanks for listening. If you want to check out more therapy nuggets, check out www.rightonbrain. Thanks.